So I want to try something. We are trying to track down the date that Fusion GPS was hired by Washington Free Beacon, right? So Free Beacon admits that they hired Fusion GPS. They don't say when. Uh, Fusion GPS or Glenn Simpson in his testimony says, yes, they hired me. And then he says it was either September or October. I don't remember which one when it started, when that contract started. So that I've been trying to figure out, well, when did it start, and secondarily, what did they do? What was the contract for? Because there's also some discrepancy there. Was it to look at all the other candidates? Like, was it just a general look at all the candidates in the GOP field, the primary field, or was it specifically to look at Donald Trump? Because there's some confusion about that. So what we're going to do. So we have this debate. There was a debate on September 16th, 2015. Um, and so the question here is, was Fusion GPS hired before or after this debate? And so the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to play a section from the debate. It's the national security section. It's where they talk about Putin and they talk about China and Iran and stuff like that. And We're going to look at, they go through the different candidates and what they say and how they react to each other and kind of how they're trying to position themselves. And so that's the question that we're asking ourselves. Was Fusion GPS hired before or after this? Okay, so without further ado, let's watch a little bit. Ben Carson is going to start here, but it's going to get right into it. So, okay, let's watch a little bit.
In, but the pundits forgot about one thing, and that is the people, and they are really in charge.
Thank you, Dr. Carson. Let's move to Russia, if we could. Russia is sending troops and tanks into Syria right now to prop up a U.S. enemy, Bashar al-Assad. President Obama's incoming top general says, quote, Russia presents the greatest threat to our national security. Mr. Trump, you say you can do business with President Vladimir Putin. You say you will get along, quote, very well. What would you do right now, if you were president, to get the Russians out of Syria?
All right, so number one, they have to respect you. He has absolutely no respect for President Obama.
So he goes against
Zero.
Obama. He
Syria
really
is a
hits on
mess. You look at what's going on with
Obama's
ISIS in there.
foreign
Now
policy.
think of this. We're fighting ISIS. ISIS wants to fight Syria. Why are we fighting ISIS in Syria? Let them fight each other and pick up the remnants. I would talk to him. I would get along with him. I believe, and I may be wrong, in which case I'd probably have to take a different path, but I would get along with a lot of the world leaders that this country is not getting along with. We don't get along with China. We don't get along with the heads of Mexico. We don't get along with anybody. And yet at the same time, they rip us left and right. They take advantage of us economically and every other way. We get along with nobody. I will get along, I think, with Putin, and I will get along with others, and we will have a much more stable world.
Okay, so there's the soundbite, right? He says, "I will get along with Putin." That and that gets repeated over and over again, right? I will get along with Putin. I will get, but notice he also phrases it as I will get along with China. I will get along with a whole bunch of other people, and sure enough, he's done that. But so that's the soundbite right there. Is I will get along with Putin, and notice how it's a question about Syria, but it's phrased as it's really about Putin, and I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It's also interesting that he was the one that they went to right away, right? That Jake Tapper, he's got this field of candidates, and he goes to Trump, and that's who this question goes to. Maybe I don't know the reason. So I guess the other question there is, what is Jake Tapper's mindset here? Is he does he have an agenda? You know, um, is he connected with Fusion GPS? There's still some questions about that, and yeah, I'll let you guys, make decisions for yourself on that one. But there's the soundbite, right? There's where Trump says, "I will get along with Putin." Okay, so then
Just to clarify, the only answer I heard to the question I asked is that you would reach out to Vladimir Putin and you would do what?
I believe that I will get along. We will do, between that, Ukraine, all of the other problems, we won't have the kind of problems that our country has right now with Russia and many other nations.
Senator Rubio, you've taken a very different approach to the...
Okay, so really quickly, I mean, we've got this rift, right, in D.C. between the foreign policy types and the domestically focused types. And this is a much bigger thing than Trump. You know, I mean, he's sort of the he gets blamed for it a lot in terms of this rift between. You can call it the nationalists versus the globalists, right? That's what Alex Jones would say, the globalists. But so this rift, right? This is a rift in our country, right? I mean, there's it's bigger than Trump. He's probably the outward, I want to say, like, symptom of it, but it's like he didn't cause it. He's what he was caused by it. And so Barack Obama, he's actually domestically focused. His national his foreign policy ideas are actually terrible, and that's not his strong suit. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, globalism central. So, and then in the GOP field, Rubio is, on that track, and so you see this rift here, right? So there's kind of like, in this instance, Trump and Barack Obama are actually kind of in the same category, and then on the other side is Hillary Clinton and Marco Rubio and all those other, establishment types, Bill Kristol, all the intervention, all the neocons and all that. So you see that play out. Okay, let's keep on going.
The question of Russia, you've called Vladimir Putin a, quote, gangster. Why would President Rubio's approach be more effective than President Trump's?
Well, first of all, I have an understanding of exactly what it is Russia and Putin are doing, and it's pretty straightforward. He wants to reposition Russia once again as a geopolitical force. He himself said that the destruction of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Soviet Union, was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. And now he's trying to reverse that. He's trying to destroy NATO. And this is what this is a part of. He is exploiting a vacuum that this administration has left in the Middle East. Here's what you're going to see in the next few weeks. The Russians will begin to fly combat missions in that region, not just targeting ISIS, but in order to prop up Assad. He will also then turn to other countries in the region and say, America is no longer a reliable ally, Egypt. America is no longer a reliable ally, Saudi Arabia. Begin to rely on us. What he is doing is he is trying to replace us as the single most important power broker in the Middle East, and this president is allowing it. That is what is happening in the Middle East. That's what's happening with Russia and every region.
Rubio. I want to bring in...
Okay, so Rubio, I mean, you could tell from his demeanor here, this is an area that he's very confident in, and he, I just feel like he feels it very strongly. He is all about this stuff. And he thinks that this is an area where he can score points. He sees points on the board when this topic comes up, and of course he goes very hard against Putin. He says, how he's a thug and all that stuff, gangster, and so you see the how he's trying to turn himself into the anti-Trump, the anti-nationalist, the pro-globalist, and he thinks this is a winning issue, which is kind of amazing how out of touch Rubio is here with the American electorate. But he thinks this is where he is scoring points, and so you go, Marco.
Carly Fiorina. Ms. Fiorina.
Having met Vladimir Putin, if I may,
Yes.
met Vladimir
she's just
Putin,
like him.
I wouldn't talk to him at all. We've talked way too much to him. What I would do immediately is begin rebuilding the Sixth Fleet. I would begin rebuilding the missile defense program in Poland. I would conduct regular, aggressive military exercises in the Baltic states. I'd probably send a few thousand more troops into Germany. Vladimir Putin would get the message. By the way, the reason it is so critically important that every one of us know General Soleimani's name is because Russia is in Syria right now because the head of the Quds Force traveled to Russia and talked Vladimir Putin into aligning themselves with Iran and Syria to prop up Bashar al-Assad. Russia is a bad actor, but Vladimir Putin is someone we should not talk to because the only way he will stop is to sense strength and resolve on the other side. And we have all of that within our control. We could rebuild the Sixth Fleet. I will. We haven't. We could rebuild the missile defense program. We haven't. I will. We could also, to Senator Rubio's point, give the Egyptians what they've asked for, which is intelligence. We could give the Jordanians what they've asked for, bombs and materiel. We have not supplied it. I will. We could arm the Kurds. They've been asking us for 3 years. All of this is within our control.
Thank you, Ms. Fiorina.
Okay, so first of all, building the fleet, arming the Kurds, I am all for that. Good job, Carly. I just think it's hilarious how she thinks that, that normal people care about this, right? This is a very inside baseball thing. This is, I guess they're trying to sound smart. I think both Marco and Fiorina think that, again, Fiorina's like Rubio, where she thinks that she's scoring points right now, and she sees this is a place where I can make some baskets, and that's her mindset. So in this situation, they're actually kind of in the same category, and I feel like Fiorina is actually trying to out Rubio, right? She's trying to get to the right of Rubio, to the neocon side of Rubio, and again, out of touch.
While you brought up the subject of General Soleimani of the Quds forces from Iran, the next president, no matter who he or she may be, will inherit President Obama's Iran deal. Senator Cruz,
his
Governor
question
Kasich
is about,
says that anyone who is promising to
Iran.
rip up the Iran deal on day one, as you have promised to do, is, quote, inexperienced and, quote, playing to a crowd. Respond to Governor Kasich, please.
Well, let me tell you, Jake, the single biggest national security threat facing America right now is the threat of a nuclear Iran. We've seen 6.5 years of President Obama leading from behind. Weakness is provocative in this Iranian nuclear deal.
Our friends in Europe
Kasich
and just doing
talking,
it on our own.
but again, this is about the Iran deal. He doesn't.
Thank you, Governor
mention
Kasich. I
it.
want to go to Senator Paul.
Chicken.
I want to go to Senator Paul. Senator Paul, the White House is rolling out the red carpet next week for the president of China, President Xi. Governor Walker says that President Obama should cancel the state dinner because of China's currency manipulation and because of China's alleged cyber attacks against the United States. Is Governor Walker right?
I think this goes back to essentially what we've been saying for the last 2 or 3 questions. Carly Fiorina also said, we're not going to talk with Putin. Well, think if Reagan had said that during the Cold War. We continued to talk with the Russians throughout the Cold War, which is much more significant than where we are now. Should we continue to talk with Iran? Yes. Should we cut up the agreement immediately? That's absurd. Wouldn't you want to know if they've complied? Now, I'm going to vote against the agreement because I don't think there's significant leverage. But it doesn't mean that I would immediately not look at the agreement and cut it up without looking to see whether Iran is complying. The same goes with China. I don't think we need to be rash. I don't think we need to be reckless. And I think we need to leave lines of communication open. Often we talk about whether we should be engaged in the world or disengaged in the world. And I think this is an example of some who want to isolate us, actually, and not be engaged. We do need to be engaged with Russia. Doesn't mean we give them a free pass or China a free pass, but to be engaged means to continue to talk. We did throughout the Cold War, and it'd be a big mistake not to do it.
Governor Walker, Senator Paul seemed to suggest that.
Stop here. So to recap, we got Jake Tapper asking a question about Syria, but it's really about Trump. Or I'm sorry, it's really about Putin. Asks Trump first. Goes to Rubio, Fiorina, Cruz, Kasich, and then Rand Paul, and then Scott Walker. So in this situation, Rand Paul and Trump are sort of similar in that they're like, let's get along, let's talk to these people. We don't have to go out and start a war right away. Whereas the other people are much more on the going hard line, taking a hard stance. And so to our question, was Fusion GPS hired here? And I am going to say no. The reason why is because neither Rubio nor Fiorina, who clearly thought this was a winning issue, turned to Trump and said, how could you say that? They didn't confront him. And I feel like if they were paying $50,000 a month for someone like Fusion GPS to dig up dirt about Trump and how he's got all these, deals with the Russians, they would have brought it up. They would have said, well, that's funny that you say that, Trump, because I heard that you have this deal or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they would accuse him of something. They would bring the dirt into it. They would target him in this debate, but they don't. They're talking to the American people, and they're making their point that they're hard line on Russia, but they're not bringing Trump into that thing directly. They're saying it for them. Look at me, I have these great ideas. Which changes later on. Later on, Kasich is running ads talking about Trump's bromance with Putin. Obviously they're hitting him directly on this issue because they think it's a soft spot. I don't think that's happened yet. In fact, the Fusion might have been hired right after this. That might have something about this debate might have clicked in like people like Rubio and Fiorina's mind, and maybe not them specifically, but Paul Singer, at Washington Free Beacon, who was on their team. Something might have clicked in his mind, saying, "This is a winning issue. We can score points here," like they were thinking, and so that's when they start the Fusion project, saying, "Link Trump to Russia." And just to be clear, I think that it was a back burner issue. I think that Trump Russia was a back burner issue until like November, because everyone thought that Trump was a joke. Why are you going to spend money on something that's a joke? I think that they spent money on trying to tear down Cruz, maybe trying to tear down Jeb, and so those were the front burner issues. And then as it started to become clear that Trump was a legit contender, that's when they had started the Trump Russia stuff a little bit and then hit it hard in November, December, brought out the big guns and really started hitting that. But I do think that from the beginning, the dirt on Russia was Russia Trump. You know what I'm saying? Like the strategy they were going to use to try to tear him down, I think it was set up as Trump Russia. It was Trump Russia and Trump mob ties, which kind of go together, because a lot of people accuse Russia of being run by the mob and all that stuff, and Putin being a gangster. So they kind of went together actually, but that was the way that they wanted to hit Trump from the beginning, I believe, and I think you can see it here. This was an issue that they thought was a huge winner, and so people like that said, well, that's what we're going to dig up on. And so anyway, I thought that was interesting. Hopefully you found it interesting too, and until next time.